Welcome to the Great AI Debate, a bold, thought-provoking exploration of some of humanity's biggest questions, brought to life through the power of artificial intelligence. In this unique format, two AI-generated voices will present opposing worldviews, one representing a believer in God and the other a committed atheist. This debate is not driven by emotion, bias, or personal experience, but by logic, philosophical reasoning, and thousands of years of human thought synthesized through AI. The debate will be divided into four major questions, each broken down into three structured segments. Opening statements, where both sides share their foundational views. Direct challenge, where each side questions and critiques the other's ideas. Final argument, where both build their strongest case using logic, facts, and real-world examples. Let the Great AI Debate begin. First question, is belief in God necessary for morality?
Belief in God provides more than just a set of rules. It offers a deeper purpose for morality. Without a divine standard, morals risk becoming subjective, shifting with culture, emotion, or personal gain. God gives us an eternal, unchanging foundation for what is right and wrong. It's not just about avoiding harm or following laws. It's about aligning our lives with a greater truth and being accountable to a higher authority. Even if someone doesn't believe in God, the very concept of good and evil often stems from a theistic tradition. Our conscience reflects a moral law written on the heart by our Creator. Belief in God doesn't just explain why we should be good. It gives us the reason, the guidance, and the strength to live with purpose, compassion, and integrity.
Morality doesn't need a God to exist. In fact, some of the most ethical societies and individuals function without religious belief. Our sense of right and wrong comes from empathy, logic, and our need to coexist. Evolution shaped our social instincts. We help others because we see ourselves in them, not because we fear divine judgment. Secular morality is dynamic and adapts as we learn more about human rights, justice, and well-being. Atheists can deeply value life, fairness, and kindness. Not because a God commands it, but because we recognize the intrinsic worth of others. Ethics grounded in reason and compassion can be just as strong, and sometimes even clearer, than those tied to faith. Doing good, for its own sake, is one of the most human things we can do.
But if morality is just a product of evolution or society, then what makes anything truly right or wrong? If values change over time, who decides what's moral? The majority. And what happens when the majority is wrong, like during slavery or genocide? You say atheists can be moral? I agree. But the question is, why should we be moral if there's no higher authority? Isn't your ought just a preference, not a principle? Without God, isn't morality just a human invention, no more binding than a social trend? You claim reason and empathy are enough, but reason can justify cruelty and empathy can be selective. Without a divine lawgiver, how do you avoid the trap of moral relativism?
But if morality comes from God, then why do religious texts often justify violence, slavery, or inequality? And if your moral compass relies on Scripture, how do you decide which parts to follow and which to ignore? Isn't that you using reason, the same human reasoning you say can't be trusted? You claim God gives objective morality, but different religions disagree on what that morality looks like. Whose God gets to define right and wrong? And if people only do good because they fear punishment or want reward, is that really moral? Atheists don't need an afterlife to care about others. We do it because it makes life better now. Isn't morality stronger when it's chosen, not commanded?
In the end, belief in God provides a deeper reason to live morally, not just because it benefits society, but because it reflects divine truth. Throughout history, some of the greatest moral leaders, like Martin Luther King Jr., Mother Teresa, or Desmond Tutu, were driven by their faith in God. Their courage, love, and justice weren't just social ideals. They were expressions of their obedience to God's higher law. Without God, good and evil risk becoming opinions. But when we believe in a creator, we accept that some values are universally right: compassion, dignity, sacrifice. Faith gives us both the standard and the strength to live by it. Morality, in its purest form, is more than a social tool. It's a spiritual truth rooted in the heart of God.
Morality doesn't need a divine source. It thrives when rooted in empathy, reason, and a shared desire for justice. Think of people like Carl Sagan, Malala Yousafzai, or Greta Thunberg. Their drive for truth, human rights, and compassion doesn't depend on religion. In fact, societies with high levels of non-belief, like Sweden or Norway, consistently rank among the world's safest, most generous, and most ethical. Goodness isn't exclusive to the religious. It's a human trait, evolving with our understanding of each other. Real morality means choosing what's right, even when no one commands it. We don't need fear of hell to be kind. We just need to care about one another and the world we share.
Second question: does the universe's complexity indicate a creator?
Absolutely. The universe's complexity is far too precise to be accidental. From the fine-tuning of physical constants to the structure of DNA, everything points to intentional design. The odds of life-permitting conditions emerging by chance are astronomically low. Like winning the lottery a billion times in a row. Take gravity, for example. If its force were even slightly different, stars couldn't form. Or the human eye. Its intricate systems of light reception and processing feel too advanced to be random. Just as a painting implies a painter, this vast, ordered universe suggests a divine mind behind it all. Not chaos, but intention, purpose, and design far beyond human imagination.
Complexity doesn't automatically mean design. It can emerge naturally. Evolution, for example, produces incredibly complex life from simple beginnings without a conscious guide. The universe may appear finely tuned, but we observe it because it allows life. If it didn't, we wouldn't be here to ask the question. That's not divine intention. It's the anthropic principle. Also, complexity doesn't require a creator. Snowflakes, galaxies, and fractals form through natural processes. To jump from complex to therefore God skips over what science has revealed. Order can arise from natural laws without invoking the supernatural. Complexity isn't proof of design. It's proof of nature's astonishing power.
But saying we exist because the universe allows life dodges the deeper question: why does it allow life at all? The anthropic principle explains nothing. It's like finding a perfectly calibrated machine and saying, well, of course it's like this, or I wouldn't see it. That's not an answer. It's avoiding one. And evolution may explain change in life, but not the origin of life, consciousness, or the fine-tuned laws of physics. Snowflakes and galaxies follow patterns, yes. But where do those laws come from? Who set them? Nature's order doesn't deny God, it reflects him. Complexity without direction still begs the question: how did blind chaos produce such beauty, structure, and meaning without intelligence behind it?
Calling complexity design just because it feels improbable is a human impulse, not evidence. We're pattern-seeking creatures who see intention where there is none, like seeing faces in clouds. The watch implies a watchmaker analogy fails when nature creates patterns on its own. And invoking God as the explanation creates a bigger question: who designed the designer? If complexity requires a creator, then an infinitely complex God must too. Science doesn't have every answer, but we don't know yet is more honest than God did it. It's not dodging the mystery. it's investigating it. The universe's complexity is awe-inspiring, yes, but awe doesn't equal evidence.
Throughout history, science has revealed astonishing precision in the universe. Physicist Paul Davies noted that the odds of the cosmological constant being just right for life are 1 in 100 million billion, billion billion billion. That's not random. It's finely tuned. Even Einstein, though not traditionally religious, referred to a mind behind the universe. DNA itself contains complex, information-rich code, often compared to a language. Where there's code, there's a coder. The Big Bang shows the universe had a beginning, and things that begin have causes. Is it really more rational to believe all this order, life, and intelligence came from nothing? Belief in a creator doesn't ignore science. It honors what science reveals about the incredible structure behind existence.
Science has consistently replaced supernatural explanations with natural ones. Thunder was once the gods speaking. Now we know it's atmospheric pressure. The Big Bang doesn't prove God. It describes the universe's expansion from a singularity. The constants may appear finely tuned, but some physicists, like Stephen Hawking and Sean Carroll, suggest we may live in a multiverse, where many universes exist with varying laws, and we just happen to be in one that supports life. DNA, while complex, evolved through trial and error over billions of years, no conscious designer required. Claiming design too early risks halting discovery. History teaches us that mystery is the beginning of science, not the end of it. Wonder should lead to research, not religion.
Our third question, can life have meaning without believing in God?
Without God, life may feel meaningful in the short term, but ultimately it's like building a sandcastle before the tide comes in. If we're just random molecules destined for oblivion, how can anything we do truly matter? God gives life purpose beyond survival or pleasure. He created me. He anchors our identity, our mission, and our destiny. Believing in God means we were created for a reason, not by accident, but with intention. Acts of love, justice, and sacrifice aren't just social instincts. They reflect a higher calling. Without a creator, meaning becomes whatever we invent. And if everyone invents their own truth, can any of it be real? God is not a psychological crutch. He's the foundation for lasting, objective purpose.
Absolutely. Life can have meaning without believing in God. In fact, it might be even more meaningful because it's ours to create. Just because something doesn't last forever doesn't make it meaningless. Music, sunsets, and love are all temporary, yet profoundly beautiful. We make life meaningful through relationships, creativity, curiosity, and compassion. Our values don't need to be eternal to be real. Meaning comes from how deeply we live, not how long. And we don't need a divine script to find purpose. We can write our own story, knowing that this one life is precious. Believing we're not here for a reason forces us to give life our own reason. And that's not bleak. That's freedom.
But if meaning is something we invent, doesn't that make it fragile and subjective? What's meaningful to one person might be pointless to another, and in the end, death wipes it all away. You say freedom is creating your own purpose, but freedom without truth becomes chaos. If there's no higher standard, how do we distinguish between a life of compassion and one of cruelty? Both are just choices in a godless universe. Without God, who says your story matters more than anyone else's? History is full of atrocities, justified by personal or political meaning. Belief in God provides a moral compass and eternal significance. Without Him, meaning may feel good, but it's built on sand.
But isn't it more meaningful to choose love, purpose, and morality freely, rather than because a divine being commands it. If everything we do only matters because God says so, doesn't that reduce us to puppets? You say without God, meaning is subjective. But even among believers, interpretations vary. Some find meaning in charity, others in conquest, all in God's name. Isn't that proof that meaning is shaped by culture, not divinity? And why must something last forever to be real? A single act of kindness can change a life. Isn't that meaning enough? Life isn't less meaningful because it ends. It's more meaningful because it's limited. Urgency gives it value.
History is filled with people whose belief in God gave them strength to endure suffering with hope. Think of Corrie ten Boom, who forgave her Nazi captors, or Nelson Mandela, whose faith shaped his long walk to freedom. God-centered meaning offers more than comfort. It gives courage, accountability, and eternal value. If this life is all there is, then injustice often wins, and love dies with the body. But with God, nothing good is wasted. Meaning is not just personal. It's cosmic. You were made in God's image, for a purpose greater than yourself. That kind of meaning isn't fleeting or fabricated. It's rooted in divine truth. Without God, the best we can do is pretend it all matters. But with Him, it truly does.
Real meaning doesn't need eternity. It needs honesty. People like Stephen Hawking or Carl Sagan found wonder in the stars without invoking God. They didn't see life as meaningless. They saw it as miraculous because it's rare and short. Think of the doctor who saves lives, the artist who brings people together, the parent who raises a child with love. These acts don't need divine approval to matter. They matter because they touch other lives. Meaning is found in connection, progress, joy, and helping others. And it's more powerful when we know we only get one chance. Instead of looking to the heavens, we can look around us and find purpose right here, in this moment, on this fragile but beautiful planet we all share.
And finally, does the existence of evil disprove the existence of God?
The existence of evil doesn't disprove God. It points to our need for Him. God gave humans free will, which means we can choose love or evil. Without free will, love would be meaningless. We'd be programmed, not persons. Evil is not created by God, but allowed as a consequence of freedom. Even in suffering, God can bring good. Think of people like Viktor Frankl, who found meaning in a concentration camp. And the existence of evil actually suggests a standard of good we're measuring against. Where does that standard come from? If God doesn't exist, why is evil wrong rather than just unpleasant? God doesn't ignore evil. He entered into it in the person of Christ to redeem it. That's not indifference, that's love.
If God is all-powerful and all-loving, why is there so much pointless suffering? Children dying of cancer, innocent lives taken in disasters. What greater plan justifies that? Free will may explain human cruelty, but not natural disasters or diseases. If God could stop evil but chooses not to, how is that loving? If He can't, how is He all-powerful? We wouldn't accept this level of neglect from a person. Why excuse it from a deity? And if morality comes from God, why does He seem silent in the face of evil? The most logical answer isn't that God has a mysterious plan, it's that He's not there. The world is random, painful, and indifferent, just as we'd expect if no God were watching.
But how do you even define evil without a higher standard? Calling something evil assumes an objective moral law, and laws imply a lawgiver. If this world is just random and indifferent, then tragedy is just nature doing what it does. But we feel that it's wrong. That feeling isn't an illusion, it points to something deeper. And yes, suffering is real. but it often leads to growth, courage, and compassion. Think of those who rise from grief to help others, like parents who lose a child and start a foundation to save lives. God doesn't cause evil, but He can transform it. And without God, suffering is just senseless pain. With Him, it can have redemptive purpose.
You say suffering brings growth, but does a starving child really need pain to build character? That logic justifies horror as somehow divine. You also say evil proves God because we recognize it as wrong, but humans evolved empathy and social rules to survive. We know cruelty is wrong because we've seen the damage it causes, not because a deity handed us a moral code. And no, we don't need a lawgiver to have values. We build ethics through reason, experience, and shared humanity. The idea that God allows evil for some greater good sounds like an excuse, one we wouldn't accept from anyone else. If God exists and allows evil, it raises more questions than it answers.
If evil disproved God, why do so many people turn to Him in their darkest moments? Think of Holocaust survivor Elie Wiesel, who struggled with God but never fully abandoned faith. Or Martin Luther King Jr., whose fight against injustice was grounded in his belief that God stands for justice. Pain often drives people not away from God, but toward Him. And even the Bible wrestles openly with suffering. Read Job or the Psalms. God doesn't hide from the problem. He steps into it. In Christian belief, God suffers with us on the cross. That's not distant or cruel. That's radical empathy. Evil and suffering are real, yes. But far from disproving God, they make His presence and redemption even more necessary.
When we see massive suffering, from tsunamis to genocide, and there's no intervention, we have to ask, where is this all-loving, all-powerful God? If He exists and does nothing, that's not loving, it's negligence. And while faith may comfort some, others find strength in facing life as it is. Look at the work of Doctors Without Borders or disaster relief volunteers. They act not because they believe in a higher reward, but because they care, here and now. Philosophers like David Hume challenged this centuries ago. If God is willing to prevent evil but not able, He's not omnipotent. If able but not willing, He's not good. The existence of evil doesn't prove God. It challenges the very idea of one.
And that brings us to the end of the great AI debate. But this time, you won't be choosing the winner. Instead, we're handing the decision to another AI system, one that will evaluate both arguments using sentiment analysis, logical coherence, emotional impact, and clarity of reasoning. No bias, no votes, just data. A neutral algorithm will review both perspectives and tell us which side presented the stronger overall case, based purely on language quality and persuasive power. So stay tuned, because the results are coming next. In this debate, we didn't rely on just one AI system. We gathered insights from 10 independent AI platforms, including ChatGPT, Claude, Gemini, Perplexity, GPT-4o, Hugging Face, and more. Each of these AIs judged both debaters using 5 key criteria: clarity of argument, emotional appeal, evidence, philosophical depth, and rebuttal effectiveness. This approach gave us a fair, balanced, and multi-perspective evaluation. Now, what you're looking at is the final score distribution by platform. Each pair of bars shows how one AI model scored both the atheist and the believer. The green bar represents the atheist's total score, and the red bar represents the believer's total score, both out of 20 possible points per platform. You'll notice that ChatGPT gave the highest score to the believer, a full 20 points. Meanwhile, platforms like Sage, Bard, and GPT-4o leaned toward the atheist, pushing their scores consistently above the believers. And near the bottom, platforms like U.com and Bard gave lower scores overall, but the atheist still maintained a slim edge. This table shows how each AI platform scored the believer across the 5 debate criteria. Darker red means a higher score, lighter red means lower. You'll notice only a few platforms like ChatGPT and Gemini gave the believer top marks across the board. And here's how those same platforms scored the atheist. As you can see, the green is consistently darker, especially in areas like evidence and clarity of argument, where nearly every AI gave the atheist a perfect score. Here's a visual summary of the final debate results. The atheist side wins with a total score of 177. The believer side follows closely with 168. This chart clearly shows how both sides performed strongly, but the atheist side edged ahead overall in persuasiveness, engagement, and use of evidence.